Good afternoon, Crime Crunchies. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am your host, Courtney C., and this is our new daily dive. It's crunch time. Woohoo! Welcome to the show again. We are going to be taking a look at a few of the most current cases that are happening right now. And we're going to begin talking about Nancy Guthrie. It is day 73 with Nancy Guthrie still missing. Whoopsie. Excuse me. Sorry about that. With Nancy Guthrie still missing, and there are not many updates. We're going to look at a few of the news stories that are happening about Nancy Guthrie, but one of the things that I wanted to really show today is the interview room the other night had Dr. Gary Brucato on, and he profiles criminals and serial murderers and all kinds of different characters. And he actually talks through what type of person it is that could have taken Nancy. And it's kind of creepy because I just rewatched a show on Netflix about Denise Huskins, who had been kidnapped several years ago in Vallejo from her boyfriend's house in Vallejo, California. And the police did not believe her boyfriend when he said he didn't do it. The story was really incredulous about how somebody had come into the home with bright lights that were shining, laser lights, put tape-covered goggles on Aaron, had Denise tie him up, and gave him NyQuil with some sort of sedative in it, and then took Denise in her car. And the police did not believe him. And I mean, I get it. I probably wouldn't believe him now either. But it turns out that she actually had been kidnapped by some rando who had been targeting the boyfriend's ex-girlfriend, who actually had nothing to do with this guy. But the kidnapper, Matthew Mueller, it turns out he was bipolar, had mental issues, was, just really kind of deranged. And it's scary to think that it could have been somebody who had mental illness who took Nancy. And that is really scary because somebody who has a mental health issue could be even more unpredictable. And, I've eaten my own words because I've said many times that there's no way that anybody can commit a crime in 2026 and not get caught. Well, this one has baffled everybody because it looks like somebody has committed the perfect crime. And I don't know. It's crazy. I mean, it was just like a month or two before this even started, I remember telling somebody, if you think you're going to commit the perfect crime in 2026, it's impossible. You're just not. You're going to get caught. This guy so far is that we know has gotten away with it. So let's take a look at the interview with Gary Brucato on the interview room from the other night. It's a little long, but I think it's really important to keep an eye on, really what type of person. I've tended to think that this could be a South American theft group that has done this. But I mean, it's very possible that it is somebody with mental illness. So let's take a look at this and see what Dr. Gary has to say.
On something, one of the first things that I think is important to do is to think about statistics and likelihoods, because at the end of the day, we have to be scientists. And everyone who knows me for more than a minute knows that I am a data fiend. I keep everything in databases. When I wake up in the morning, when I go on my phone and I see there's been a homicide, the link to that article on the web is going in an Excel row in one of my databases, and all of the information that on that case that is publicly available and later available in legal documents is going in there, because I want to be able to run statistics on likelihoods of anything you ask me about. Okay. And that ultimately is exactly what we did with the mass murder database at Columbia, right? Okay. So the first thing that I would be thinking about, because I think the point of this conversation is how do you think about a case, right? The first thing I would be thinking about is this. Let's say we have to first think, is this a homicide or is this an abduction, right? Or is this something else like a robbery that went haywire? And the reason it's important is because there are different probabilities in each bucket, okay? So if we're talking about a homicide, 60% of people that are killed know the person who killed them in some personal way, all right? So you're already leaning in the direction of it's more probable that it's not a stranger who killed you. That's important. If you are female, there's about a 92% chance that you personally knew the person who killed you. Okay, that's extremely important. So about 92% of women, it is estimated, who are killed by their boyfriend, their husband, or a former romantic partner, or a family member, right? 8 out of 10 sexual assaults are committed by somebody who knew you. That's extremely important. Then you say, okay, well, let's start with the sexual motivation, okay? Somebody broke in to attack an 84-year-old woman sexually. Somebody in the chat suggested it. Okay, first of all, statistically speaking, the kind of person who would do that is very, very rare. There are only, in the United States in 2024, the last time I know this data to have been released, there were only, I have the number, actually, I wrote it down. There were 381 killings of people older than 75 years old.
It's very
in
low.
the United States. Okay, already extremely rare. Then embedded within that, what's the probability of a sexual assault on that individual? Minuscule, tiny. Then you have the fact that a sexual assault by a stranger is actually, it does happen, but the idea is you have to look at the age range at which it tends to happen. Okay, so first of all, you're super rare when you're at the level of that age. And statistics tell us that the person will be most likely, that who would do that would be most likely to be a family member. And about 70% of the time when it happens to elders, it happens in a nursing home or in your own home. Okay. Now, so what does that tell you? That the notion of an outsider coming in and attacking an elderly woman, sexually assaulting her and killing her, you're now taking unlikely on top of unlikely on top of unlikely on top of, and you get down to something that would be like extremely profoundly rare. Okay. Then you add on top of that the fact that the statistics tell us that if somebody were to do that, they would be likely to do it serially. So then you say, okay, how many sexually assaulting serial killers are there in the United States at any given time? It's estimated there are about 250. So we would be suggesting that one of those 250 approximately killers, who are most likely male, right, are breaking into a home to sexually assault a woman and kill her. Then what would you say? You'd say statistically, most likely that person has done it before, is probably somewhere in the records of prior sex offending, or probably has been arrested before, because they're going to keep doing it. And within a geographic area, you're going to start to see a popping up of more cases of it, right? You all see where I'm going with this? Rare. So forget that one. Throw that one out the window. It's very, now, is it possible? Of course. It's also possible I'll walk outside and a piano will fall on my head, but it's not probable. Okay, so let's put that over there. Then you say, what about the possibility of abduction? Okay, there are 350 abductions approximately a year in the United States.
Rare.
That's it. And out of them, the vast majority of them are children. And when they are children, believe it or not, most of them are taken by people who know them. There is only a 0.001% chance that when you are abducted as a child, that you're being sent off to sexual slavery or held as a sexual slave in someone's home or any of those things. But the public's imagination goes to that stuff. Super rare. Even rarer than that, an elderly woman being abducted.
That's why it just doesn't make sense. What
reasons.
Happened to Nancy?
Also extremely
does
improbable.
Not make sense.
The most likely scenario, because it happens 1 million times a year or more in the United States, is there is a financial motive. And as I said, statistics tell us if you have a female individual who is killed or sexually assaulted, in the United States, they know the person who did it to them. Now, we couple that with the comfort that we see on that video, the fact that we've deduced from the timeline that this person spent a great deal of time in that house. There's no evidence of there having been a robbery, because we don't know of anything having been taken. And an abduction also seems ridiculous, because if you're abducting a person for money, you sort of want them intact. You don't want them bleeding. You would take their medication. You don't leave their meds and have a stopped pacemaker. So then you start saying, okay, well, based on probability, if it's somebody who knows you and the most likely thing is financial, then you would look at the inner circle of people who know you and how they would financially benefit.
This is why the families come under so much scrutiny
from
even now, even after being
You see
cleared.
where I'm going with this? You all follow
the chance of Nancy being taken.
Okay, so then once you get
the chance of Nancy having been taken by some rando is you have a better chance of winning the lottery or getting hit by lightning. And again, the family's been cleared, but it just if it is a rando, it's just so rare that somebody took her. And this guy might have mental illness. Let's
down
continue.
to that. Then we look at this video.
I think we have to leave the family on the table, not Savannah.
What can we feel out about this person? So, Chris, if you put the video up, if you don't mind, on the screen.
And what Gary is saying is that he said every time somebody that comes across his desk, some crime has happened, he puts them in an Excel spreadsheet and he tracks what he learns about the case. And what he's telling us is that in abductions, for what happened to Nancy Guthrie is so rare. Again, you would almost have a better chance of winning the lottery or getting a royal flush at a casino. I mean, it just doesn't happen by somebody, a rando who doesn't know her. So let's continue.
Now, let me emphasize that person who knows you could mean anything. Doesn't have to be super intimate. They just know you. Could be a person who worked with you. Could be the mailman. Could be the guy who cleaned the pool. You guys know what I mean? Could be. So when we're giving those statistics, we mean somebody has more than a passing connection with you. They're going to know some stuff about you. So then when you look at this offender, what you want to do is try to imagine the psychology based partially on that person's intelligence. The first thing I do when I think about something, I have to step into that person's intelligence level, right? So this is not a person based on using the flowers in front of the camera and some of the other getting caught on the camera after, and all this other stuff. You start thinking, okay, the person's intelligent enough to kind of get away with this, but this is a person who did some planning and still did some pretty stupid things here, right? So this is not a top rate intelligence here, right? I mean, we would all agree, right? We're not dealing with Stephen Hawking here, right? Am I correct about that? Okay. I mean, this is not Stephen Hawking. And then, so the first thing that I would be thinking about is you're dealing with a person who probably isn't the brightest bulb in the entire world. So we already are getting a feel for a person. Then you start thinking about the outfit that the person brought and the things that they did that don't
South
make a lot of
American
sense.
tough groups, which
like the holster, the way that the holster is being held, and the way that the gun doesn't match the holster, and all that kind of behavior. And you start thinking to yourself, additionally, this may not be a professional. So you have an unprofessional quality on top of not being especially bright. Then you have the fact that he looks so cool that you think, is this guy stoned?
Yes.
Is he some kind of psychopath?
Yes.
Now, I have to tell you, when I see a person who is doing something like this without looking scared at all, I start thinking they're a little bit on the psychopathic side, because there's no concern at all, nothing. Beyond,
which tracks with the guy who took Denise Huskins, because he was a psychopath and he was calm, cool, and collected. It was very planned. He had an abduction kit. So this could be a total nut job.
Not wanting to get caught and stopped, there doesn't seem to be any threat that is causing this person to have physiological symptoms of nervousness. So then you start saying, why is that person's nervous system not acting normally? Even if any one of us planned, with everything we know about crime, decided we were going to go and do something like this, we would be a little nervous, a little bit. This person looks like they're taking a stroll in the park. I don't agree with the person in the audience who says that that's all BS. I don't agree. I think these things are all logical. So, and if you don't agree with any of this, please tell me in terms of my thought process here. So my sense is this guy, based on what I'm seeing on the screen, looks like this is not his first rodeo with crime. He's probably committed home invasions before and has a kind of callous disregard. That can also be glimpsed by the fact that this person did what he did with an 84-year-old person, right? And looks like that.
He's a sicko.
Knowing that this is an 84-year-old victim, right? That's going to be bleeding and taken out of the house and everything else.
He's a sicko.
So already we get a sense of a person who is callous. If you are a person who is callous, you don't become that kind of person at this person's approximate age. Chances are you have a sociopathic character structure that's going to go all the way back to the time you're a kid. Conduct disorder precedes antisocial personality features, and you tend to see that stuff going back a long way. Now, why is that important? Because this person probably is going to have a history of prior criminal behavior, which means someone in prison might know them, somebody in a jail might know them, the local cops might even know them.
Could be an initiation too.
Right? That's important too. I mean, for God's sake, the guy has very specific visual characteristics, physical characteristics, the way he leans, the way he walks. They could be interviewing people in a prison setting or in a jail setting and saying, ever seen this guy before? Does he look familiar? You guys know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So that you would want to talk to the demi-monde in the area who may have encountered this individual before. And then the other thing that's interesting about it is with that kind of person, since it's so personality based, chances are this person has done things in their life that are going to stand out to people, because I do believe this person's local. People in the local area would know that this is a person who has a very distinct personality. So what kind of personality do you tend to see in people that are cool-headed when committing a crime? They're usually extremely sensitive to being insulted, very explosive.
Say that again, Gary, you cut off.
They're usually very sensitive to being insulted and hold grudges for a long time. So what you tend to hear is things like, I remember that guy. He came into the supermarket once and somebody bumped into his shoulder and he started screaming at the guy. I told him he was going to kill him. I remember that very distinctly. You know that kind of a character? Grudge holding, nasty, has to level the playing field kind of character. That's very, very important, because you start getting the sense that this person in the local area has been noticed, either as somebody using.
I could also see this type of personality, the guy who you're getting gas and he's the one at the convenience store who's just standing at the counter talking to the cashier endlessly while they're trying to work and just doesn't take social cues and just keeps talking while you're trying to get your gas. I could see that as well.
Drugs or committing petty crime or just being a jerk. Because you can't be a sadistic person cool under pressure like that without some kind of local stuff building up around you, that you have a personality that is nasty like that. People are going to know that about you. Okay. So then the other thing is, if you look at this guy, we don't actually know if this person is operating alone at all.
He's not.
And this kind of person, you know, when you're looking at him, the reality is that if this is some kind of group enterprise, financially motivated thing, it's entirely possible that this is a person working in some kind of nut jobs, but it's just the only one who got caught on the camera. Now, we've said for a long time, this looks sort of like the waiter that comes out and serves the food, because there's nothing personal about it. Doesn't seem to be anything emotional about it. But if there is any personal motive behind it, that person's more like the cook that we don't see. So the important thing to tell law enforcement, if I were looking at this, would be to say, you have to catch this person, and then this person will lead you to the center of the spider web.
He'll squeal like a little piggy.
Look, you know, your sentence could be dependent upon whether you give us information on who really told you to do this. I think you just have a financial stake in this. Somebody hired you. Now, what gives me that sense? Because if there's a personal thing here, and let's face it, there doesn't seem to be any clear, typical, non-emotional motive here, right? The person would be more emotional and less callous. right? If you've ever seen a person who knows you, who kills you, for example, you see overkill. The person takes it out on you. They've destroyed your face. They've mutilated you. They've destroyed the entire house.
Which is a dichotomy, because in this case, the statistics show that this is going to be a family member, someone who wants something, someone who needs her out of the way. Statistics show that it's going to be a close family member or someone that they know. But the dichotomy is that this is probably a rando who is part of a group, a club, and they're just horrible human beings, which is just weird.
So what I think is, this is just this person who got kind of hired or asked to go in and do this in a pragmatic way. And then when you take all the information, you put it all together, what it looks like is nothing went the way that it was supposed to go.
Agreed.
You get the sense of this not particularly bright guy who went in there overly confident. I'm going to pull this, that, and the other thing off. And it didn't go the way it was supposed to go. And so my sense is this woman passed away during whatever it is that was supposed to happen. And then this idiot goes back to whatever group it is that said, or person who said, go do this for me, and said, now what? Well, we got to figure out a way to capitalize on this anyway.
Then the letters.
See, that kind of thing. Now, second point about that. Let's say it was just a homicide. Well, if it isn't a homicide by a person from the outside, then what would be the reason that a person who knows you would kill you? Well, there are two basically big reasons why you would do that. One reason is that you want to eliminate a person because they are an impediment to something that you want.
Money.
They're in the way of money. They're in the way of a sexual partner. They're in the way of, they're a burden, and you want them out of the way. So, and as you all know, that's what I've called in my writing elimination murder. As a characteristic of elimination murder, it is so typical that I've made it a criterion of elimination murder, is you have to give the impression one way or another that somebody very, very, very far outside of the house did it. But because you're not very professional or intelligent or sophisticated, you make it look like an outside person did it, but you don't stage properly that there was a robbery or a sexual motive. So anybody with half a brain knows that it doesn't make sense, because a person who's going to break in a house to kill you has to have a clear reason to do so, right? You don't do a good job of staging that. So you sort of mess that up. The second possibility is you just hate the person's guts for some reason. And you, like I keep saying, you would see a much more emotional scene
I don't
here.
think
there would have been much more going on there. So this looks to me much more pragmatic, and it involves. So it's you guys follow. It looks very pragmatic.
Yes,
and
Dr.
it looks
Gary.
like it's been carried out by somebody who wasn't particularly bright, but who didn't give a flying leap about humanity. Saw people basically as some kind of a means to an end, or a meal ticket or something like that, in a callous way, and probably has a long history of doing that in a petty way. And because they're not particularly sophisticated, I think that people in the area have encountered this person, and they should be going around talking to people, particularly in legal settings, in jail settings or prison settings, saying, this guy look familiar? It's a lot of money on the line here. You could really benefit. You want to turn this dope in? Anybody have?
You guys ever heard of the deck? So what law enforcement has done is they'll take 52 cards, and instead of like jack of diamonds or 10 of diamonds, they put a face of somebody who's wanted, and they hand them out at the jail. So that when the guys are playing cards, they're playing it with the deck, and the deck are, do you recognize these people? Because people end up, birds of a feather.
Any idea who this is? I also think this is a local. I really do. I think this is a local. And I don't know. I'm curious if you guys agree with that.
I agree.
But comfort in the familiarity suggests to me local. Now, is there anything in what I said that
Mexico could still be in play,
or making sense to you guys? It sounds like it jives with your own feelings about things, but you tell me.
Exactly.
Dr. Gary, no one's going to disagree with you, because you're brilliant, okay? And he's the sexy nerd on the screen. So go, Dr. Gary.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right on, Dr. Gary. And I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. Remember, people out there, if you're watching, you can recognize somebody the same as if you're identifying. So don't think that, well, because he's got a mask on, I can't make an identification here. There's something where you can say, I recognize that person, and it'll hold up in a court of law.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those
corroborating factors. Yeah.
All I was going to say is that those type of offenders also tend to monitor everything you're saying about them. So don't be shocked, for example, if the person's watching this. When we talked about Koberger, we knew that Koberger was probably watching everything we say. To this day, I wait to get a letter from Koberger. And I'm telling you, I told Keith Morrison when he interviewed me for Dateline, I said to him off camera, Keith, I'll let you know when I get the letter. There will be a day when that type of person decides that they want to know how you understood them, and they reach out to you. Listen.
Well, and this goes into the last segment that I'm going to talk about and save with Rex Heuermann. Blech. Blech. It was hard for me to even put his picture up here, but one thing I want to talk about with the ransom letters is I actually am going to go to tmz.com and I'm going to fill out the contact us form, and the same place that the ransom note people filled out that they supposedly could not trace. And I'm going to ask Harvey Levin to pay the Bitcoin for Nancy Guthrie, because the only way we're going to know whether or not these people are real or if they're just opportunists. Some folks have thought that the time frame that the last letter ransom came out, the last note came out, was timely because Savannah went back to work at the Today Show. But either way, Harvey Levin seems to think that this is the same person because they're using the same account number. Okay. And they've not published that anywhere. So this person is using the same Bitcoin wallet account number. So Harvey Levin and TMZ has made so much money off advertising with their page view spikes on their website, their app, YouTube, Instagram, X. They've made so much money from advertising. They have a duty, I think, to pay the half of the Bitcoin in order to find out if this guy will finally put up or shut up. And this way the family's hands are clean. They're not emotionally invested. Let's see what happens with this money. The fact that they have not even put really any significant money in this Bitcoin wallet is astounding to me. And the FBI is calling that shot because apparently on the back end, you can supposedly, what happens is, and you've probably heard this by now, but what happens is you put money into an anonymous wallet. Okay. You don't know who that is, but once somebody moves it into an exchange, which is the next step in order to get it into a bank account where they actually can withdraw it, that's where the identification happens. Okay. And wow, this is crazy. What if they pay this guy and he actually has information? Okay. We were just talking, Dr. Gary was talking about how they could go into the jails and they could ask people, do you recognize this walk? Do you recognize this stance? You could actually get somebody who knows somebody just because of association. Crazy idea. What if the person writing this note that supposedly knows who took Nancy, what if they actually are on the fringe of these scumbags just by association? You don't know. They said that they're not in the country. They could be in Mexico. They say that they took her to Mexico. They say they actually saw her. How do we know? Somehow this person trusts Harvey Levin for whatever reason. Harvey Levin, pay the man. Pay the man $35,000. Pay him. Pay him. The family shouldn't have to pay him. The family is dealing with other things. Pay them. So I am going to go on TMZ. I actually almost wanted to just do it while I was live and fill out their little contact us form and say, hey, Harvey, newsflash, just pay him. Okay, let's find out what happens. Seems like it might be a good idea. Maybe there's a real reason why we shouldn't. I mean, who am I? I get it. Whatever. just a thought. All right. All right. So let's go over to my next video. Boop. Doop. All right. So let's see the bite light. Okay. So this is a segment, and this is from a few days ago, but I think it's really pertinent because, you know, the guy in the video that does match what we've seen. Megyn Kelly put a video of these international theft rings, these like a South American theft group, these theft rings that, I mean, it looks like a little costume, a little outfit that they all, okay, you get the little jacket, you get the backpack with the little reflector, you get the ski mask, you're covered in gloves, you got your little tennies on, and then you got the little flashlight, and they keep it in their mouth so the little hands are free. So what happens when you've got something hanging out of your mouth? Like when you're at the dentist, all your little slobber comes out. So let's talk about how, again, everyone's freaking out. That damn mat at the front door has not been taken. They need to go back and will someone please get that dang mat that's at the front door?
Search for Nancy Guthrie, and with no suspect on law enforcement's radar, there are fears this case has gone cold. DNA samples could still hold the key, but no second crime scene has been identified yet. And the sample investigators do have is mixed, meaning it contains the DNA of more than one person. This would have to be deconvoluted, as they say, and separated before a real analysis can even begin. Renowned DNA expert and genetic genealogist CeCe Moore told News Nation earlier this week that investigators should return to Nancy Guthrie's home in search of more samples. And CeCe joins us live tonight. CeCe, I always get so much out of our talks. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me again.
And you joined me for an episode of my Truth of the Matter podcast. Almost 500,000 people watching that on YouTube. So many of them commenting, wanting to learn more from you regarding what you said about the likelihood of saliva DNA in that house from this perpetrator. You say that detail of him holding the flashlight in his mouth can't be ignored. What evidence do you think is still left in that house?
Well, it's hard to know what they have already collected. It's possible they collected dozens or hundreds of swabs, and they're still going through testing those. It's so hard for a crime scene investigator to know exactly what to swab, since most of DNA is invisible to the eye. Right? So sometimes it just is a trained intuition that causes them to just swab the correct thing. Now, if they have tested everything and haven't found a good sample of the perpetrator's DNA, I do think that it is possible to go back to her home and do some more swabbing. But as I said, I wasn't there. I don't know how many they gathered, but DNA is hardy. So it's certainly possible. There is still some DNA there. And in particular, I really do think that saliva is the most likely. And that is because of what appeared to be that bite flashlight in his mouth. Yeah. Somebody wrote to me that has used one of those and agreed with me that it would produce a lot of saliva and it would be very difficult not to leave some of that behind.
And I know that you've told me before that sometimes, even light switches or really unassuming places in a home can crack an entire case. It was interesting. Our News Nation's Brian Enton spoke with a key source who said that the supervisor overseeing the case had never previously investigated a homicide before. I mean, you say this comes down a lot of times to experience and the gut of the person going in, surveying that area and taking as many samples as is needed. Does that concern you to hear that they had never investigated a homicide before?
Yes.
Well, even if he hadn't, I'm sure the crime scene investigators were very experienced and they would be the ones that would be collecting that DNA. And so I still have confidence that those very experienced, skilled crime scene investigators would know, how to collect the DNA. But because, as I said, it's invisible, they may not have swabbed exactly the right thing to find that individual's DNA through no fault of their own, just because it's hard to know in a house like that, where would you even start other than the obvious places?
And investigators already gave the home back to the Guthrie family weeks ago. I mean, could that pose a problem if they go looking for more samples? Or in your opinion, should they still go back and re-swab?
Yes.
Well, it could, but because they know who has been in that home, they can still eliminate those individuals' DNA. So I don't think it's as big of a problem as I've heard a lot of people speaking about. The only issue to me would be more if there was saliva on the ground, for instance, or a rootless hair that could also solve the case. It could have been tracked back out. Could end up on the bottom of someone's shoe.
Maybe he had to take a dump.
If there is something that is still on a surface then I think it's still, possible that they could get that person's DNA if they haven't done that already. Now, of course, this is, a little bit of a Hail Mary, but I think everything in this case right now, based on at least what we know, appears to be that at this point.
And you told News Nation earlier this week that new technology in your field could help solve this case. Can you tell us more? What would that new technology be and be able to do? And is there any hope that investigators will get access to that soon?
Well, because we are working with mixed DNA samples so often in forensics evidence due to sexual assaults or the violence in, personal crimes, this is something that the scientists have been very interested in pushing forward and improving the ability to deconvolute, as you mentioned. So there are new software packages that are being developed all the time, trying to make it possible to deconvolute these more complex DNA samples like it appears they have in this case. There's also some machinery, some equipment that I was told is not ready yet, but that could actually help to deconvolute the DNA from the beginning. So typically the scientists are working with the data that comes out of the lab.
Thank you.
And Cece Moore she is a boss babe, and I just cannot say enough about her. We do need anything that they can come up with. We need. I was going to watch a little bit more. I'm going to be switching stories, but I had made a note to watch around the 2 hour. This was a very long 4 hours, the interview room. I don't know if let me know if anyone else here watches the interview room. It's very techie, scientific, but I mean, it's really good stuff. And I love, and I think all true crimers, you guys are really smart. You guys use critical thinking. You're logical. You like the science. You understand the science. So let me know if you guys, anyone watching does watch the interview room. I just wanted to play a bit more of this segment.
Yeah, first. Other than how are you today, detective? Stuff like that. But that's going to be their first question.
Yep. And they're going to go on board, Dyer, you and your training and experience.
These are smart old farts.
They're going to flush that out pretty quickly. Danny Aarons, any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the way we work, Chris, as you remember, and John and Bob at our agency, we worked it was generally a 3-man team, homicide team, depending on which team was on call. And the sergeant would designate one of us as the case agent. That would be the guy in charge that you were talking about, Chris. And then the other two guys are going to be, one's going to be the crime scene manager, who's going to be working directly hand in hand with the uniformed crime scene people, which early on in our agency, they were actual police officers, but then they gradually went over to a civilian. They
move forward.
And you want to take control of everything. As we've said a million times here on this panel, Nano should have appointed a PIO.
This is what I wanted.
Now, I don't begrudge him as an elected sheriff of having an interview or two at an initial news conference or something at the onset of the case, just to show that, hey, I'm the sheriff and I'm running this investigation. But he shouldn't have made he shouldn't have done many of the interviews that he did subsequent to the initial press conference. And he certainly shouldn't have done that without consulting the detectives. And when I mean the detectives, I mean the real sergeant and the detectives, the boots on the ground, because there's certain information that maybe they didn't want out in the public sphere. And you're not going to know that if your nanos and your ego is guiding the ship, which apparently has happened in this case. And so that's a real critical thing. How do you tell the sheriff, especially the one that's been so vindictive in the past, the recent past, that he shouldn't say certain things, don't tell the public this, don't tell the public that. When I was a detective, I had a sergeant that did that on one of my cases. And he was a brand new sergeant without any homicide experience at all. And he went out, unbeknownst to me, the next day after we had worked this case the night before, worked the scene the night before, and imparted a myriad of evidence on the case to the news media without consulting me or even telling me he was going to do the interview. And to say I was livid is an understatement. And we got things taken care of after that.
I like how he says that. Yeah, I just love that camera. Well, guess what? So does Nanos. And Nanos is, we're still we're waiting. So as of April 8th, little tiny baby Chris Nanos, who loves to look at himself at the gym with his little convertible. April 8th, there's a 10 days, I think 10 days before he has to sit in front of the Pima County supervisors under oath and answer questions and actually be a real man and answer, you know. And here's the sad thing. The sad thing is this guy, when you have a narcissist, they're just never wrong. They're never wrong. And you could show him, you could map out on the wall a flow chart of how he's wrong and how he screwed up. And he's going to argue with you. And I guarantee you, he's not going to come in front of the supervisors with any, I'm sorry, I apologize. Maybe he will. I'll just fall over in my chair and roll around on the floor if he does. But this type of personality, he's just always right. He is the BMOC, the big man on campus. He's not going to take any answer from anyone. He's on a power trip. He is an egomaniac. He's just a nightmare. I don't know how tall he is, but he's got little man syndrome. So April 8th, down to 10 days. So we're looking around the 18th, probably next week. He should be sitting down on the hot seat. And I do hope that he fries. So we're going to switch over now on the It's Crunch Time. And we're going to talk about Brian Hooker. And some of these stories are from the other day, but I think that they're still pertinent because these are maps that he shared where he went. And of course, we're talking about Brian Hooker's wife, Lynette Hooker. He actually was released from jail last night. At this time, they still have him as a person of interest as they continue the investigation. So he's actually sat down for a short interview, and we're going to look at that. But I want to look at the maps that he sent his friends. So let's dive into this little doo-wah.
CBS News has obtained exclusive new images from the Bahamas in the case of the missing Michigan woman. Her husband remains in custody but has not been charged. And CBS's Christian Benavides is in Freeport.
I love it when he
Good evening, Tom. These exclusive images apparently came from Brian Hooker, who remains detained here at the Grand Bahama Police Station. He apparently sent them to friends, and he told them that he also sent them to Bahamian law enforcement. These maps provide the most detailed account of what Hooker says happened the night that his wife, Lynette Hooker, went missing. They include the exact spot where Hooker claims his wife fell off their dinghy into strong currents last Saturday, where their sailboat was located, and the exact spot where he landed. It comes as we are hearing from Lynette Hooker's daughter for the first time since the arrest of her stepfather, Brian.
I don't want it to be true because he was part of my life growing up, and I care about him.
Carly also tells us that she plans to travel to the Bahamas this week
and
intends to search for her mother herself. Meantime, Brian Hooker is not facing any charges, but police here have extended his detention until Monday evening, citing an ongoing investigation. Tom, we reached out to Bahamian authorities to confirm that they received those images, and we also reached out to Hooker's attorney, but we have not heard back.
Okay, so I stole those images from CBS. We're going to look at them really quick. So this is what he provided. And the thing that I want to talk about most is, And I've had some people write in my last video in the chat. And I mean, it seems like such an obvious thing. Where was his cell phone? Okay. It looks like it's far, but he may have had cell signal. I mean, if anyone's taken a cruise, you have cell signal for quite a while. And in the Bahamas, there's tons of islands. There's Wi-Fi, there's cell towers on a lot of these little islands because, you know, people need Wi-Fi. But if you look at where he was at dinner and how far away his boat was right here where the red is. And the end of the red line is where they went to dinner. It's like 2.5 miles is what I'm hearing. I'm sorry. I am not taking that tiny boat for 2.5 miles in the water. Maybe they were used to it and they didn't care. I am such a freak. I do not like swimming in the ocean, especially at night, because there's like nasty fish and sharks, and I mean lots of sharks. Okay. But that seems like a really far distance. And here's the deal, because of the GPS, investigators, and obviously they don't have enough on him, and I knew this was going to be so circumstantial. It was going to be tough for them to nail it, because it really is. I mean, it's him against her. And unless they have something real solid, it was going to be hard for them to actually keep him in custody and do charges. So if they can see where they've parked before, they've moored their yacht before, because this is an area that they've gone to, then they can see if they parked the yacht further away than they have ever in the past. Because the further, if it's something out of the ordinary, this could have been premeditated is what I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to get at. Okay. So the fact that it's 2.5 miles away, that they moored the yacht and are taking this little dinghy, seems really, really far to me. Now, I want to say, in defense of Brian Hooker, Lynette had a bit of a drinking problem herself. She actually has an arrest record of DV against Brian. Okay. So this looks like they were just bad for each other. All right. This isn't what looks bad right now, is that she didn't come back and Brian did. And he has threatened to have done that. There's, you know, all of their friends and family. This is not surprising. And the friends even were concerned about what happened, because I think that they knew that something was going to happen. Her mother, Lynette's mother, knew that her daughter's days were numbered and that something was probably going to happen. So while she's surprised and devastated by this, she's probably not totally surprised from what she said, that they just were bad for each other. And when they were both drinking, both guilty of that, and apparent, like I said, Lynette has actually been arrested for DV against Brian. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander in this. No judgment. I mean, I'm an equal opportunity crap talker, if that makes sense. Okay. If you're guilty and I think it, I'm going to say it, whether it's a girl or a guy, I don't care. So if he had his cell phone, why? I have so many questions. Okay. My first question was, you know, the currents are very, very strong. Is the current going to move her away from him and the boat go in a different direction, because the boat's sitting on the water and the wind could have been blowing? Okay. That's the only reason why I could logically think that she went in a different direction than him. And the daughter said, why didn't he drop anchor and try to get her? Which is another question. I think he could have tried harder. And honestly, today, the fact that he walked out of that jail, he is the luckiest man alive, honestly. And if he did do this to her, he needs to fix his life, because it does not look very good that he did not do this to her. Okay. I don't think that there's a lot of people who really don't think that he did something. Okay. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe something went too far. You know, I honestly, looking at the dinghy, I could see how somebody could fall out of the dinghy. I'm kind of klutzy. I just don't know that there was enough of a bounce to get her out of the dinghy. And again, if they're drinking, coming back from dinner, they could have both been really sloshed. And that's when an argument is going to happen, especially with his history of when he's drinking and they're both drinkers, but he gets angry. Supposedly, allegedly, when he drinks, he gets angry and mean. Okay. So it just doesn't sound like they were good for each other. So my first question is, why was the yacht moored so far away? Could they check to see if they had moored there before? And, is there any type of evidence to show that if they were moored in a different place further away, is there premeditation? Hi, Naples Realtor Pilot. Hello, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me. All right. So, and then the second point of this is, where was the cell phone? Nobody ever said anything about her cell phone. Okay. Supposedly the mother has said that an Apple Watch was found maybe on a beach. I don't know if it's working with all the salt water. I don't know how well those do in the water, but where was her cell phone? If he's driving the boat and the key's in the boat, she's not going to have touched that key, which is another reason why I call BS on this. There's no way she had the key. And I think that his excuse about the key and him throwing her a life jacket is probably the number one reason why they even detained him in the first place, because that don't make sense. Okay. It doesn't compute. No, it doesn't compute. And again, I'm not a sailor because I don't like fishies in the water. Yucky. They make me scream. I think the last time I went snorkeling off in the Caribbean, there were sharks, and I remember screaming in my snorkel and then running back to the boat and climbing up screaming, and I was the only one. Everyone else was going to take pictures. It was me, just because I'm extra. So, all right. So he's saying that this is where he lost her. Right here. Let me pull this one up. He's saying that they dinghied around and that he lost her at the end of this red line. And they have looked at current patterns. And I actually had pulled some up the other day. Let me see if I had. Okay, someone else had pulled Brian Dinghy route. I'm trying to pull up my pictures that I had the other day. I put together a timeline, because what the timeline is, of course, is they supposedly left this restaurant, and I'm sure that law enforcement has checked cameras, but they left the restaurant at 7:30 p.m. This isn't really telling me anymore. So they left at 7:30. They get in the dinghy and they go do. And then this is where the accident happens. And then he spends the next 8 hours paddling. We haven't heard anything about oars. Okay. What was he paddling with? Did he have a oar, 2 oars, his hands? But somehow he drifted and paddled and ended up at Marsh Bay. Okay, the next morning. And then it took him an hour, because it was like around 4 or 5 a.m. that he finally made land. He was hoping that she had swam to the boat, which is bizarre because, again, he had moored 2.5 miles away from. So why would she swim if she's swimming away? I don't understand how the current took her in one direction and the boat in another, but it could have been the wind. But so the timeline is at 5 or 6 a.m. is when he notifies law enforcement. And by then it's hard to say where she went. Okay. Very sad story. Let me see if this other picture has anything that we need to look at. Doesn't look like there's anything there. Okay. So here are some texts. Show American missing in Bahamas told friend about concerns in her marriage in 2004. So this is, again, he has been released. He's still a person of interest, but let's look at some texts because, again, I'm not convinced that he's in the clear yet. Okay, let's go.
In the case of a Michigan woman missing in the Bahamas for more than a week now, CBS News has obtained her texts about troubles in her marriage. Today, we will learn if Lynette Hooker's husband, his name is Brian, will be charged with a crime. Christian Benavidez is in Freeport with the latest. Christian, good morning to you. What can you tell us?
Gail, good morning. These messages show that Lynette had confided in a friend back in 2024 about issues in her marriage, telling that friend that they had, quote, called it quits before getting back together.
Social media videos and photos posted by Lynette and Brian Hooker in 2024 show the couple happily living and sailing together. But just weeks earlier, Lynette told a friend their marriage was over in messages obtained exclusively by CBS News. In late 2024, Lynette told Marnie Stevenson, a fellow boater, "I guess it was just too much closeness. We decided to call it quits." When pressed if the two could reconcile, Lynette told her friend, "Not this time. It was real bad. I can't be out there with him." But within a month, the two appeared to be back together.
We knew that there were problems.
Lynette's daughter, Carly Aylesworth, said Brian's story about what happened the night her mom disappeared doesn't add up.
I wish he wasn't detained. Like, I really hope that this was an accident, but I just feel like a moment of anger from him has done something where he can't
probably what
undo
happened.
it.
Brian told police his wife fell overboard from their 8-foot dinghy during a nighttime ride on April 4th. He repeated a similar story to the Stevensons in a phone call last week. They recorded that call.
She basically just bounced off the dinghy in the middle of a little blow.
These maps with drawings from Brian may provide the most detailed account of what he says happened that night. The 59-year-old told friends he shared the images with boaters and law enforcement to help search and rescue teams. Brian was arrested by police Wednesday and has gone through several hours-long interviews.
He's now released.
His attorney.
He was questioned in relation to causing harm, which resulted in her death, but we have no evidence that any body has been recovered.
I like his attorney. She's, she seems like she's got a lot going for her. I like her so far. Okay, so he was released last night. Again, he's the luckiest SOB on the planet. Oh my God, he's probably pooping blue Smurf turds this whole time, especially if he's guilty. And either way, I'm sure that if I think what happened is they probably were both drinking. They're probably both bitching at each other. They both had problems. They both were not good for each other. Something bad happened. And he probably regrets what happened. And I hope he gets his life together. It's very unfortunate. So let's take a look at him leaving the Bahamian jail.
Of a Michigan woman who disappeared on a boat ride in the Bahamas 10 days ago. Brian Hooker was released from police custody without being charged. CBS News correspondent Christian Benavidez is live from Freeport, Bahamas, and joins us to talk about it. So, Christian, what did he tell you?
Vlad and Kelly, good morning. Well, look, he had a lot to say, but he couldn't get to it because his attorney cut the interview short. We had a lot of questions for him. We asked him 3 very important questions in between our conversation with him. Just to give you a little backdrop on how exactly we got to this interview, we had agreed to an interview at some point today. And then we got a phone call early this morning that said the interview has to happen at this very moment because Brian Hooker is going to leave the area where we are in right now.
He's getting out.
So within very short notice, we quickly were able to get something set up. We spoke to him, but we only spoke to him for about 6 minutes before his attorney said that he couldn't get into certain aspects of the investigation. Here is some of the interview, and we'll talk about it on the other end.
Leave.
I want to. My goal is to go back and speak with the Hopetown Fire and Rescue volunteers, the search and rescue volunteers. They have been I believe, still looking whenever they can, but even while I have been detained by the Royal Bahamian Police Department. I was speaking with a volunteer the day that I was detained to go out on one of their boats. They were going to take off work and take me searching some more areas. I won't be able to stop looking.
You want to keep looking for Lynette?
I'm going to need somebody with more authority to tell me to stop.
His attorney's about ready to say, shut up. Look.
Can you explain to me, you've seen the attention this case has had.
And more like I've heard about it. I have not looked at the news or any social media since
She looks like she's getting
since
nervous.
the day before the accident, because my sister flew in to support me and said it's getting terrible out there. And then I went to dinner one night after searching, and I was approached by a freelance reporter, and I began to think that it was going to be terrible.
Yeah, it is.
That freelancer was our CBS News producer who had tracked down Brian Hooker for us and asked him if he had anything to say about the ongoing search. You've seen that video on our platforms. Importantly, the things that we did not get to ask him about: what happened on the dinghy, what happened that night, because his attorney, again, cut the interview short. We did ask him a number of important questions, among them if he believes that Lynette is still alive. He said that he does, and he goes into what he wants to do next. So we'll have clips of that interview throughout the day on all CBS News platforms.
Yeah, Christian, an incredible get on that interview. And I mean, well done. You had to try some of those questions, but obviously, as expected, the lawyer stepped in.
So wait, Christian, you said he's on his way somewhere. Is he leaving the country, or where's he going?
He better.
The attorney wouldn't elaborate on where they're going. All they told us is that, so last evening we were told that we would have this sit down with Brian Hooker at some point between now and about noon. So at some point during the day. And then early this morning, we got a phone call that was quite pressing, with the attorney saying, we need to do this right now because we're going to leave. And when I asked to elaborate, she wouldn't say where they were going necessarily. And so we sort of scrambled just to be able to speak to him and got a few questions in before it was cut short.
Okay, so that's very interesting. And honestly, it doesn't sound like they kept his passport. They could have kept his passport. I did find this part of the interview where you can see that the interview is cut short for CBS News on Instagram. And we watched the first part where he starts tearing up. And you know what? I'm sure no matter what happened, I'm sure he's upset about this. I mean, how can you not? He's looks like just a regular guy. Even his stepdaughter, who says that he's been in her life since she was 5, hopes that she could handle it if it was just an accident. She just needs to really know what happened. And I mean, his life is forever changed regardless. So let's take a look at this. Oops.
How difficult has it been? I know that you had an incident on...
I'm sorry. It's really difficult for him now. I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm sorry. Sure. We have to end it there.
Can you just, I think that the main question that everyone has, because there's so much attention on this and people are writing about this, that I think people want to hear from you directly. If you believe that Lynette's still alive.
I do. I believe I've been told that people have lasted in the Bahamas after falling overboard for days and even weeks. There are so many islands. There are so many sandbars, little atolls and spits of land. Of course, you think about alternatives to that, but I'm not really capable of just turning away from this.
Okay.
And
thank you.
She ends it.
Thank you for having me.
I'm not sure exactly what makes her end it, but she ends it there. So anyway, we'll see what happens. I don't know. Nobody said if they've kept his passport. It looks like she didn't elaborate on where he was going to go. He's very lucky, that this was so circumstantial. Officially, legally, we don't know what happened to Lynette. Maybe she's out there. It's really hard to say. If they were both drinking, makes it harder for her to tread water if she was inebriated. So we'll just see what happens with that. My last story on my daily dive on It's Crunch Time. I'm going to talk about, oh God, I don't even want to say his name, Rex Heuermann. Okay, so he pled guilty to 8 counts last week. And it's taken me a minute to even talk about this because he's just a monster. He's a living monster. And part of his plea deal is that he's going to spend time with psychologists, and they're going to get inside his brain, because he truly is a prolific serial emmer, and he has probably at least 1993 is when they think he started, but there's got to be more people. There has to be more people. Every time his little family left, he was doing these horrible things. And the only thing I'm going to say about RH is he pled guilty. The judge had him, just like with Koberger, has him, reach each victim's name and says, "Are you pleading guilty?" And he says yes. And what was the cause of of death? And to every single one of them, he said strangulation. Now, I'm sorry. Nobody has questioned that I've seen. Nobody has questioned this. You're telling me there's no way in this entire world that he strangled them all. There's no way. They would be lucky if that's what he did to them. So I don't think that he was honest. I think he cleaned it up. I don't know how people are accepting this. I feel horrible for the victims' families. But as I'm watching that, I couldn't watch the whole thing because he's so disgusting, just the replays. He's so disgusting and repulsive and truly a monster. And what those women went through, days in his basement. And people really are accepting that that's how they ended. You're nuts if that's what you think, or you're gullible, or you're naive. Okay? There's no way that he just strangled them. And it's sick. But he got away with it. And I think that the smiley face killer had written him in prison and just said, look, save your family a trial, of any decency. But, he walked into the courtroom. He didn't even look at his wife and his daughter who was weeping. Even putting the picture on my thumbnail today, I wrote puke under it because he is a puke. But I don't know what they're going to find out from him. It's going to take a long time. It's going to take a lot of patience to get what really happened. I think he finally did plead because it was going to look really bad. It was going to be drug out. And ultimately the smiley face smiley face killer told him that he could get a better place to go for life, a better prison. He would be able to do a job, meaning he wouldn't be stuck in a cell all day. He could actually go, cook the food or do the laundry, something like that, to keep himself busy, and the food would be better. And RH replied and said, "Can you get butter for your bread?" Wow. So, and he doesn't look like he's missed any meals, does it? Doesn't look like he's missed any meals. So he's hopefully wherever he goes, he can get butter for his bread, which, Anyway, that is it for today on our daily dive. It's crunch time. I really appreciate everybody who joined me so much. please remember to subscribe, like, share, comment. I am a new channel and the algorithm fights me. We battle on a regular basis. I'm going to be at CrimeCon next month. I cannot wait. I'm in this for the long haul. I am your host, Courtney C., a 27-year veteran of the media. Please join me. Hit the notification bell. I do live content. I appreciate everybody so much. And until the next time, I will catch you on the flip side.